On this week's episode, we have Tyson Ellis. Tyson is the pitching coach at Eastern Florida State College. In this episode, he talks about his own personal pitching philosophies. We get into college recruiting, specifically at the junior college level. And then lastly, Tyson takes us through how he goes about developing his pitchers at Eastern Florida. Hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, make sure to hit the subscribe button, because every podcast I put out from this point going forward will be right here on YouTube. All right, Tyson Ellis, welcome to the podcast. How's it going, man?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
So you're down in Florida right now. I'm in Cincinnati. It's like 25 degrees outside. It's dark and gloomy like it normally is every day this time of year. But, it was good connecting with you. We were at the Connecting the Dots conference down in Tampa last weekend with TJ Wharton and everybody down there. Take everybody a little bit through of your own background. I know, we'll get into currently where you're at in coaching, but playing background and just kind of just give us the elevator pitch on who Tyson Ellis is.
Okay. So playing background was a little interesting. I went to USC Upstate out of high school. That's where I signed. I went there for my freshman fall. I decided to transfer at the end of the break. So I was a mid-year transfer. I transferred to Gulf Coast State College, which is a junior college in Panama City in Florida. Was there for the spring. I ended up getting hurt there. So I had a partially torn labrum, didn't really pitch a lot, was kind of like the injury thing, whatever. So had to leave there because of the injury. So my first year was kind of just like a whirlwind of college, like 2 schools, whatever. But ended up having a good summer, played summer ball out in Wyoming, and I got a walk-on spot at Pensacola State. So that's where I played my redshirt freshman year, was at Pensacola State College. Played there for the whole year, had a really good year, and then ended up signing to Troy. And then I played my last 2.5 years at Troy until my last year I got hurt, got cut, and then I started coaching. So then from coaching, that happened in the fall. I'm from Florida originally. So I'm from North Florida, Lake City. Which is kind of in between Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tallahassee, that kind of area. And I wasn't even going to coach baseball, to be honest. I think it's kind of one of those typical stories of when guys have their playing career ends poorly, you kind of you kind of resent it a little bit at first because, you kind of wanted it to be better, whatever. And I was moving to Jacksonville, and I actually was working in a law office. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I moved to Jacksonville because it was a lot of my high school friends would go to the University of Florida, and they would just move to Jacksonville as their first, growing up place. And one of the GAs, Scotty Bateman, that was at Troy when I was there, he was the pitching coach at FSCJ, which is a JUCO in Jacksonville. And he was like, hey, if you're going to live here, come out and help us, I could really use it, be around the game, all that. And I was like, sure, it was more of a voluntary thing. I went to my 9-to-5 job and would just show up when I could. And then I helped out. And then that year we ended up making it all the way to the D2 JUCO World Series. It was a crazy run. No one really thought that we were going to do it. It was very, very much a Cinderella story kind of thing. And I think that just going through that process and getting to be a part of a super regional and then going out to the World Series, that kind of re-sparked my love for baseball. I was it kind of made me remember why I wanted to coach again. Mm-hmm. So then after that, I decided to go get my first coaching job. I went up to Rockingham Community College in North Carolina as the pitching coach. I was there for the entire fall, ended up moving over to Camp Community College, which is in Virginia, for that spring. And we went to the World Series that year too. So that spring. So my first 2 springs coaching, it was D2 JUCO World Series, D3 JUCO World Series. So very interesting.
Didn't even know there was a D3 JUCO.
Yep. So I would say a lot of the bigger name D3 JUCOs are in the Northeast, like Herkimer, that's one that people have usually heard of, Herkimer, RSCJ, Gloucester, Niagara. They have some really good players up there, but yeah, it's typically more of a Northeast kind of thing.
Wait, what can you explain to everybody? What's the difference between a D1 JUCO, a D2 JUCO, and a D3 JUCO?
Okay, so a Division I junior college, the scholarships now, it depends on the school, but as far as the rules go, a Division I junior college can offer you everything. They can offer you a full ride. They can give you tuition. They can give you housing. They can give you meals if you have a cafeteria. They can offer you everything at a Division I junior college. You can get a full scholarship. At a Division II junior college, you can only get tuition. So they can only give you tuition. For a lot of the schools that don't have housing on campus. So if they don't have a housing option, A lot of those schools will be Division II junior colleges, so their scholarships are solely tuition. You're going to pay for your own housing if you're a Division II JUCO player. And then Division III is no scholarship money, just like a regular Division III. So those JUCOs are no scholarship money. And yeah, so it's pretty much like the NCAA, like, right? Like Division I has the most scholarships, Division II has a lot, but a little bit less, and then Division III is none.
What
So
about the talent level, the competition between the levels? Because you've obviously experienced all of them.
yeah, I think that it's a lot like most levels, right? The top is still really good. Now, I would say being in Florida JUCO now, it's Florida Junior College. At Division I, Florida Junior College is really, really good baseball. I mean, we can argue between us and Texas, but it's probably the best junior college in the country. And biasly, I think it is. But when we made it out to the World Series at camp, those D3, the top D3 JUCOs, they have some really good baseball players too. Like we opened up against Niagara Community College, and the kid that started Game 1 of the World Series for them got drafted in the eighth round that year. No, fifth round that year. He came out sitting like 94, 97. They have some really good players up there. The Division II JUCO level, it's getting better and better because I think that more in Florida, especially, it's in the last 4 years they've just been adding teams. So before I got to FSCJ, there was only I think two teams for a long time, just Pasco Hernando and ASA Miami. And now there's actually like St. John's River, FSCJ, Pasco, South Florida State, Palm Beach State. So I think as it's getting bigger, it's getting better. I do think that typically the talent level overall at each level it kind of goes down a little bit, but there's really good players at every level, no doubt, no doubt. So, but yeah, the Division I level, I think to me it's more of it's just the history behind the schools, right? You have schools like Chipola and State College of Florida and all of these guys that have just been around for so long and have such a good track record of moving guys on and getting guys drafted that naturally the most talented players are going to want to go there, and they have the opportunity to go for free a lot of the times.
So at the Division I JUCO level, like they're allowed to give, it sounds like up to, full scholarships for everybody on the roster, 28
no,
minimum.
not everybody on the roster. So that is
No.
what, yeah, that's what differentiates between programs. So every school kind of it's kind of like how it's probably going to be with this Division I thing now with the more scholarships. Is some programs depending on their funding can offer more full scholarships than the other. Every school can only offer up to 24 scholarships.
Okay.
It just depends on how it goes. Some schools have more fulls than other schools. Some schools have a little bit less. It just depends. But from what I mean, every school in Florida has at least some full scholarships. Yes, but there are definitely schools that have more than others. But yeah, like you said, it's for our guys, if it's a full scholarship, it's going to be you're going to get a free dorm room and you're going to get all of your school paid for. And I know that there's some programs in the state that have cafeterias, and you could potentially get your dorm paid for, your school paid for, and if they have a meal plan or something, you can give them a meal plan too, depending on what school you're at.
Okay. So just to clarify, you're allowed 28 players on the roster.
Yep.
Okay. And then the school, it's depending on the school, but you're potentially allowed up to 24 full scholarships for Division I JUCO.
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure about 24 full school. From what I know, the most is 18 of what I've heard of school having is maybe 18 full scholarships, and then maybe some like just tuition only scholarships after that. But like I said, every school is just so different because, some schools like here at Eastern Florida, it's like the school says, hey, you have this many full scholarships, you have this many tuition scholarships. And then, but there's also schools in our conference that we've talked to from other coaches that, maybe their administration just says, hey, you have this much total money, break it up however you want to, right? So for us, like if you're a full scholarship, you're a full scholarship, right? We can't split that in half. We can't
okay.
split a full scholarship in half and make it two half scholarships.
Where did the 20 was it 24 when you referred to that earlier? Was that just scholarships in general, not necessarily
Yeah,
full scholarships?
correct,
Okay.
correct,
Okay. Okay.
correct.
So 18 full scholarships is what they would be allowed.
Yeah, some schools.
Some
That's
schools, some schools.
some schools. Yeah.
What do you guys do?
So we can give. It kind of depends a little bit. We can give kids some stipend money out of our fundraising money and stuff like that. We have, less full scholarships than we have tuition scholarships. I'm not gonna like say the exact numbers out loud just because but I mean we have a decent amount of both, right? And that's kind of how you split it up. So
What's the tuition?
the tuition for in-state here is $3,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
So, and I'll
mean,
say for us, a lot of times,
you're worried about giving scholarship amount when it's that cheap.
yeah, exactly. And that's where I will say, and that's the beauty of Florida JUCO is that, especially being in Florida, you can get a lot of. And so, right, think about what you just said: 28 roster spots, 24 scholarships. So by that number alone, you're going to have at least 4 walk-ons that are on your team, right?
Hmm.
And you have to. And in Florida, being fortunate, you can get a lot of really good walk-on players. Because it's like, hey, you're in Florida, the in-state tuition here is $3,000. You can find a lot of kids that can afford that and just walk on and end up being really good. Like when I went to Pensacola, I was a walk on because for me, it was $3,000. I was a full Pell Grant kid. So I got $6,000 from the government. So I didn't pay anything to go to school. And then, I ended up being a good player and moved on from there. So yeah, it's not as much. I think the scholarships kind of come into play a little bit more when you start talking about recruiting transfer kids, right? When you have kids that are coming from the big Division I schools and stuff, that's where kind of that stuff is. But I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of programs in the state that when you can hit on some big walk-ons, those will be guys like for instance, we have a kid this year who just signed to VCU. He's a lefty, and he walked on because he was kind of a late bloomer. And his first year here, he came in topping at about 87, and now he's up to 92, 93. And now he's getting a really good scholarship to go to VCU. And he was able to make it work because he was a good student and it was $3,000 and it's not that bad. And I think that, for Florida JUCO, that's a big sell for us for a lot of kids is, hey, even if you do have to walk on, it's $3,000. You know, a school maybe up north can offer you 60% baseball money and you're still paying way more than $3,000.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that part helps us for sure.
What is the out-of-state tuition? Like, say I'm in Ohio, I want to come play for you in Florida. What would it be?
I'm pretty sure it's 10 for the year. So it's still not even that bad, really.
Right.
It's really not that bad. And I'll tell you the way I like to do it a lot is we personally try to get a lot of out of state kids because of that money, right? It's like the money kind of goes a little bit further, right? Because it's like, hey, we're saving you $10,000 versus
Mm.
a Florida kid. It's like, hey, man, especially if you're a Pell Grant kid or in Florida, if you have Bright Futures, which is, the academic money in high school in Florida, then you can potentially come here for free. So
What's a Pell Grant kid? I'm not familiar with that.
that's FAFSA. So like free federal free it's just federal financial aid. I'm not exactly sure what it stands for, to be honest. But it's when, if you come from a family that doesn't make a ton of money,
Hmm.
you would apply for a FAFSA. And then that's a grant that the federal government gives you for going to college. So if you're a full Pell Grant kid, I'm not exactly sure what the number is. It's changed since I was in college. But if you're a full Pell Grant kid, the federal government will give you $7,000 a year, like free. You don't have to give it back. It's just here. You're in college. Here's $7,000. So
Really?
yes, and that's another big thing with Florida Junior College too, and that's I think why a lot of times you might see some really talented players decide to go to Florida Junior College because if you're a FAFSA kid and you're getting $7,000 from the federal government for free, and then this school offers you a full scholarship. Now that $7,000 goes directly into your pocket. You're just keeping that.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a good deal. And is that they do that for 4 years or?
Yeah. So for us, it's 2 years because it's junior college. But
Right, but I mean for the actual
yes,
kid.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. You get the Pell Grant for 4 years.
So you got that for your old college career.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
great.
Yep. Because like
That's
I was really fortunate. Like between Troy, like when I went to Troy, it was so Troy's a big military school, like in the sense that the chancellor was a Marine for a long time, and my dad was in the military. So with Troy, I didn't even take any baseball money. I got a military scholarship. So the military scholarship, because I was a dependent, took down tuition. So it was a little bit less than in-state. So I was an out-of-state kid. I basically paid a little bit less than in-state tuition because of this military scholarship. But my tuition for the whole year at Troy was $6,000, and my Pell Grant paid all of it. So I went to Troy for free, basically for school, and then all my granddad had to pay for was my housing. And in Troy, Alabama at the time, it was me and one of my junior college teammates who also went to Troy with me. Um, we split a house. We paid $450 a month in rent. So
Jeez.
pretty deal.
First of all, not first of all, second of all, I love your Twitter bio where you said you're I think you said platinum Door Dasher.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So is that something that you used to do or still do?
Oh no, I
DoorDash?
do it.
You
I do
still
it.
do it?
Oh yeah, I grind it.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Talk, walk me through like when throughout the year are you doing door dashing?
Right now I'm doing a ton of it. So this is the time of the year where all of our guys are back home for Christmas break. So we're really not doing much here. And this is when most of the time, like I'll DoorDash for, I'll come up to the field, usually between like 10 and 12:30 or so for some of the guys that like to stay around and work out so I can be here while they're here. But yeah, usually I'll wake up in the morning. DoorDash in the morning is big. There's like a lot of
Yeah.
people who will like just DoorDash Starbucks and stuff. And then yeah, I'll come to the field. Maybe if I'll go home and do something for a little bit and then I'll do it again at night too. So I usually try to knock out about 6, 7 hours a day.
Every day.
Yeah, for the most part.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it for a while. So like it goes all the way back to when I was playing. When I was playing, it was like a way for me. So one of my last years, I went up to Tread Athletics
Okay.
and trained there for the summer. So the way I got to pay for it was literally I would go to Tread and I would work out there from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., go home, eat, and then DoorDash in Charlotte for the next 4 or 5 hours. And that's how I paid to go to Tread for the summer.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love
So no,
that.
it's awesome because like being a junior college pitching coach isn't exactly lucrative.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like it people always and there's a lot of JUCO coaches that might have like other side jobs, but for me, like I want to be able to be here for the guys whenever I need to be. So I need a job that doesn't like have the structure of like, hey, you have to be here from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. With DoorDash, what's really nice is like you can just hop on whenever. Well, now
Hmm.
I can. That was the whole thing with me trying to become a platinum dasher because like one of the benefits of being a platinum DoorDasher is you can DoorDash whenever you want to. So, which typically you can't do if you do it. Like it has to be kind of like busy in your area to be able to DoorDash.
Oh, I thought you saying platinum DoorDasher was you just being like trying to be funny. That's actual
No,
thing.
no, I actually it's an actual level. Like it's the highest level of DoorDasher perk is platinum DoorDasher.
That's incredible, man. Well,
Yeah.
good, dude. I respect you for out here grinding. I love that. I like
Yeah.
that. So you've been, I mean, it sounds like, you're obviously in the pitching front. You've been to Tread. You paid for your own way to go to Tread by door dashing the hours you weren't working out there. I know we talked a little bit about when we were in Tampa together, you're obviously on social media and trying to learn and as much information as you possibly can. I feel like pitching. I don't see as much hate on the pitching side as I do on the hitting side when I go on social media. But talk me through like what you teach, what you believe in, like what's kind of your pitching philosophy, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think for me, it's the differences in pitching that you see online is to me it's pitching at a certain level. It's just so different, right? It's like, we go to connecting the dots and we listen to Cam talk and Cam's super smart guy. I love him,
Yep.
but a lot of times, they're talking about, different TrackMan metrics, different all this stuff, which is all great stuff. And it's absolutely a tool to use for development. But at this level, at the Florida junior college level, like we have the Acrotech here and we're very fortunate. Like not a lot of schools have that. So we can't use that kind of approach the way a professional team can, the way a Division I team can. So for me, my big goal is one is at the junior college level, we're trying to get guys moved on first and foremost, right? Like, we're trying to win. We want to win the national championship. Like that's what we're trying to do. But our ultimate goal is we have to move guys on, right? We don't want their baseball career to end at Eastern Florida. And for me, it's okay, how do we not only, I don't want them just to move on, right? I don't want my guys to just be able to post on their Instagram that they're going to VCU, right? That's awesome. Good for them. It's very exciting. But like, I want to develop them to where they walk onto VCU's campus and they help VCU win. Like, that's what we need them to do, right? So for me, and I think I really shifted it this year, is the number one thing we talk about more than anything else is toughness. It's being able to compete, right, with whatever you have, right? I know there's a lot of guys who are going to be really on the development side, right? Like, oh, we need our guys to throw harder, we need to have better stuff, and we do, right? Like the bigger answer, broader picture is you have to do everything, right? Like you have to work out, you have to look at your metrics on a Yakr you have to have good mechanics, you have to move well, like you have to be able to do all of those things. But for me, it's teaching guys like how do you compete, like how do you truly compete, right? And it's teaching guys how to succeed in an unfair game, right? So I have a saying, and I'll bleep out one of the words, but it's something that our guys hear me say a lot. And from this toughness side is it's fair is for p words, like fair is for p words, right? Like we're playing an unfair game, and if we expect everything to be fair, you're not going to be very successful, right? So a lot of what we do is is helping guys compete through difficult things, right? And we're teaching toughness mentally, because to me, if you can't compete, if you don't have that competitive edge, what your fastball number is, how much your breaking ball moves, what a mover you are, all that stuff's irrelevant, right?
Hmm.
And honestly, I think at this level you see it more than anything else, because come out to a Florida JUCO game, you're going to see a lot of guys that can throw a baseball at 95 miles an hour, but that does not mean they can pitch, and it doesn't mean they can get guys out, right? A lot of these guys, like if you want to look up some of the guys that got drafted out of our conference last year, not many of them had really good ERAs, right? Like not saying anything bad about those kids, they're great pitchers, that's why they got drafted, but they don't have it quite put together yet, right? And so for me, it's a toughness, it's a competitive mindset of that's our floor, right? So if we talk about like these development periods, right, or pyramids, right? So like the bottom level is like your base, and then you kind of go up, and it gets a little bit more specific as you go up, right? Like to me, that bottom level is being tough and being competitive, right? If you can't be tough, if you can't handle adversity, if you can't handle the pressure of pitching, then everything after that it's going to be really hard for you to succeed, right? I don't care if you throw 94 or 84. A kid who's going to throw some of our most innings this year is a left-handed pitcher that's 83 to 85 miles an hour, because I know that when I put him on the mound, there's nobody in the world he's afraid of, right? He's not afraid of the person standing in the box. He's not afraid of the logo that the other team has. He's not afraid of the moment, and he's going to go out there and he's just going to compete, right? And that's the kind of mindset that we start with from philosophy, right? So that's literally the guys come in. We have our first pitchers meeting. We have 4 pillars, and the first one's toughness, discipline, effort, and focus. So if we can't do those things, right? If you're not tough, if you're not disciplined, if you're not focused, and you don't have good effort, then what are that's what we have to have, right? Everything else is after that, right? We can start working on specific little nuanced things, right? The individual pieces that make each guy better. But if we don't have that base, it's going to be really hard for you to succeed here. And it's certainly going to be hard for you to succeed when you go on to the next level of these high mid-major Division I levels of baseball.
So how do you go about being able to evaluate toughness? Like if you're going to watch a high school pitcher pitch, I mean, where my mind would go would be, okay, like, someone behind you makes an error. Like, do you show them up? Do you show body language? Or the catcher misses a ball and it goes back to the backstop? Like, do you throw your arms out? Like, that's where I kind of go. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, how do you define toughness? Like, how would you evaluate that?
Yeah, it's that's definitely part of it. That was part of we had a little toughness chart this fall, and that's one of them. How you react to an error, how you react to that stuff. And it's not always not showing emotion, right? Because it's something we preach is to not show emotion. But you know, if you're a true competitor, right, and you make that big pitch, and then your shortstop boots it, it's hard for you to not get upset, right? Like
Sure.
it's more about it's not about your immediate knee jerk reaction, in my opinion. It's what's the next pitch look like, right? So it's like, okay, like I said, guy makes an error, you're like shrugs his shoulders, whatever. I get it. We all need that kind of thing that we do to reset. But my problem is one of our really, really, really big things we preach on is after an error, we can't walk the next guy. That's a lack of toughness. That's a lack of mental toughness. That shows me that you let that error get in your head, and it helped, and you lost your focus, and you couldn't let that pitch go, right? So it's more about, okay, the guy made an error, the catcher let the ball go by, but I'm gonna get back on the mound and I'm just gonna keep making pitches. That's mental toughness, in my opinion. Things like 4-pitch walks, like that's a big one. You're gonna walk people, but like a 4-pitch walk to me is just a total lack of focus, and a lack of focus is a lack of mental toughness, right? Like for whatever reason, you stepped up there and you threw 4 pitches that weren't really close. Like that can't really happen, right? It's gonna happen, but that's something that I would definitely use to evaluate someone's like mental fortitude. Is stuff like it's really just how you react, performance wise, not necessarily body reaction, right? It's something that you look at. I definitely look at the reaction of it, right? But I care a lot more about, okay, what's he do this next batter?
Hmm. You said that there is several guys throwing 95 miles an hour for the JUCO. I think the average Division I velocity is 89. What would you say it is at the JUCO level? Is this a scenario where is this like rookie ball where you got guys throwing 100 miles an hour but they don't know where it goes? Then you got guys in AAA throwing 92 but they know they can dot it up.
It's everywhere in between. It is truly everywhere in between. Like every team, I would say, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but Off the top of my head, I would say we have a 12-team conference. At least at least half of the teams have one guy that can throw 95 miles an hour. At least. And some teams have more than that. And honestly, that's just quick thought. It's probably more than that. But at the same time, like I said, we have a little lefty who is 83 to 85 and can really pitch. And other teams have guys like that too. And then you're going to have a lot of guys that are in between there, right? You have guys that are 86, 88 and can really pitch. And, we have, like, for instance, prime example, right? Two different kids that got drafted out of our league last year. There was a kid from Polk State College, their Friday guy. He was really projectable, 6'4" guy, but he was 88 to 90. I think he could run it up to maybe 92, 93 on a good day, but he could really pitch. I mean, he was fastball in, fastball away, fastball up, curveball off of it, could really, really pitch. Got drafted, right? Now, State College of Florida had a big lefty he was a left-handed pitcher, really loose, easy, up to 97 consistently. And now he sprayed it a little bit more. The breaking stuff wasn't as consistent as this other kid, but those two guys both got drafted, both in the same league, a little bit different, right? You're going to have guys that are, we had another kid last year that pitched a lot of innings for us who was a right-handed pitcher. He was 84 to 87. He threw 48 innings and walked 4 guys. Yeah, pretty insane stat, right? Especially in today's game. That's a crazy stat. But it's kind of everything in between. And for me, I think that part of this philosophy that you're kind of talking about is I'm not one of the coaches that, to me, shape, like, your shapes, your sizes, your velocities. Like, is there a threshold you have to be successful? Absolutely, right? Like, if you're throwing 76 miles an hour, it's probably not going to work. But it's about getting guys out. We're playing the game of baseball, right? We're not playing the game of recruiting. We're not playing the game of getting drafted. We're playing baseball. And baseball is, how do you get the guy that's holding the bat out? I see guys that do it throwing 85 that have a way more success doing it than guys that throw 95, right? We've all seen those kind of guys. And I think for me, it's, just get guys that can get guys out, figure out how, hey, if I throw 85, how do I get this guy out throwing 85? And then play baseball, be a pitcher, get guys out, and then opportunities will come from that. But going back to just, what you see is, it's a little bit of the guys that are the high octane guys that are the 93, 95. A lot of times they are going to spray it a little bit more, right? But they have really live arms. You're going to see some really talented players. If you come and watch a Florida JUCO game, you're going to see a lot of talented players, and you'll also see some polished guys. So it's really anywhere in between. It's really anywhere in between.
Or someone who's in high school who maybe is considering going to the junior college level, how does the recruiting work once you're at a junior college? Is it a scenario where it's like, hey, that whatever you put up numbers wise, like that's going to determine the offers that you get? Like, how does it work?
A lot. I mean, it's kind of the both, like the kind I was just saying, everywhere in between. So the left-handed pitcher that I just was talking about, 83, 85 last year, he signed to Bethune-Cookman this fall. So he's going to Division I school, and he's a soft throwing lefty, right? It boils down a lot more to what the other schools, what are the 4-year, what's their philosophy, right? So if you have some 4-year programs that want guys that blow cheddar, then throwing 95 is going to be what gets you there, right? But like for a guy like the right-handed pitcher that walked 4 guys, traditionally you wouldn't think of a 85 to 88 right-handed pitcher, getting looked at by Division I schools, but when they look and they're like, he walked how many guys? He's like, yeah, 4. That's the real number. It's like, oh, okay. Well, if he has that good of command, then maybe, that's something that works. So, but a lot of times as a freshman, you're not really going to get recruited a ton.
Why is that?
It's just, I mean, if you're really good, it happens, right? Like, it definitely really happens. I think what it is the only time I've really ever seen freshmen get signed is it's when it's big schools, right? Like, we had a kid here a couple of years ago before I got here who he left here as a freshman to go to Miami, right? Indian River State College, right down the road. They had a really good closer last year. I'm so happy he's not going to be back this year. He ended up signing to Florida State after his freshman year to go up to Florida State. Now there's a couple of other things that kind of go into it. So, your grades as a high schooler. So if you weren't an NCAA qualifier at a high school, then you have to go to a junior college for 2 years and get an AA before you can go to Division I. So that's definitely part of it for some kids. And then a lot of times I just think that kids are, if they have a solid freshman year and maybe a mid-major or a lower mid-major wants to pick them up, a lot of times kids are more like, let's just have another year of JUCO and see what happens, right? And, I think after that freshman year too, they realized that with junior college, this 28-man roster, like, if you have a good freshman year, you know you're going to get to pitch a lot. You're usually typically going to get a little bit more scholarship money. Um, there's kind of a lot of things that go into it, but typically you don't really see freshmen going as much unless it's like a big school to where it's like, if Florida State comes knocking, it's kind of hard to say no. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, I just know at some schools and in some programs, they don't want to ruin necessarily their relationship with that JUCO by
Yeah.
offering a freshman and snagging them, and then it's like, oh, that hurts you guys for the next year.
Yeah, and it's for us. We don't care about that. It's our goal is my goal is to develop a guy, and ultimately, I want him to get to a program he wants to go to. Right. So, and it doesn't even have to be a Miami or a Florida State. Like if a kid comes in and he says he wants to go to a certain school, and then after his freshman year, that school wants him. Sure, man. Like we did our job, right? We did the job that we were set out to do. Our job was to develop you into the player that can get you to the school that you want to go to. That you did that. Okay, cool, man. Everyone's happy. We all win here, right? We'll go recruit another player. It is what it is. But our job is to take care of our guys, and if that's what our guys want, then we'll do it.
I think you brought up something that I actually just did a YouTube video on, and I don't think many people realize this is so much of this depends on what the specific type of coach or specific school that they're like, what type of player that they want. Do they want somebody who, like you said, throws strikes? Do they want somebody who, like, hey, like most of their outs are fly balls, they're in high induced vertical break because the ball doesn't carry at all at their field. And so it's like understanding that. I think for one, you're less frustrated because if you see somebody you think you have better stuff than or whatever, it's like, why'd he get offered and why didn't I? Well, it's because he fits their mold, right?
Yep.
And you don't. Not that he's necessarily any better. Is that something that you see quite a good amount on the pitching side?
Yeah, I mean, this is only my second year being in Florida Junior College, where we have a lot more guys that are capable of signing to these Division I schools. But yeah, it's definitely very real. And I think I was just talking to one of my buddies who is a Division I pitching coach not too long ago, and we were kind of talking about how the game kind of evolves. I think we were talking about this down at Connecting the Dots a
Yeah.
little bit about how the game kind of evolves and like I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, it was an arms race, right? Like everyone's like, give me the stuff, give me the stuff, give me the stuff, give me all the TrackMan numbers, give me the stuff, And then the last couple of years of college baseball, like it's a great product, and there are guys with some awesome stuff, but there's also a ton of guys with great stuff that cannot get people
Yeah.
out, right? And they have, especially from a junior college guy, right? A junior college guy, you are getting brought in to play, right? You're not. It's not a development thing. You're coming in to play. And I think that a lot of schools are starting to look at, hey, maybe there is room for a guy that can pitch a little bit. You played at Xavier. It's like you definitely understand like the game 3 starter, right? Like a guy like, our right-handed pitcher who's kind of getting some looks now for the command. It's like, how it is in Division I baseball. If you can get a guy that can go out there on Sunday and just fill up the strike zone,
Uh-huh.
you're gonna be he's gonna give you a chance to win the game more times than not. Like, and I think a lot of schools are starting to see this as like, the return of we're not necessarily chasing high ceiling all the time. Like it's okay to get a guy that might have a low ceiling, but also has a really high floor, right? So it's like, yeah, this guy's might not be a guy who goes out there and throws 94 and punches out 12 people, but if he can go out there on a Sunday or on a midweek for me and give me 4 innings of competitive baseball with good tempo in the strike zone and give our hitters a chance to score, like that's kind of how you win those Sunday games, those midweek games, right?
Do you call all the pitches?
I do here, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why do you call the pitches?
I call them because I watch all the pitchers throw,
Hmm.
so I know their best stuff. I think a lot of times too with me, it's and I let the guys, I'm not like one of these coaches. It's like don't shake me off, right?
Yeah.
Like I give,
I'm not asking that because I'm
yeah,
like, oh, that's terrible of you. I'm just
yeah,
kind of curious.
yeah. No, it's like to me, it's one. I think that I watch their bullpens a lot more, right? And I kind of understand. You have to. It's really between your guys, right? It's some guys understand what their stuff does, right? Some guys don't, right? So with some guys, it's almost like you're breathing the confidence into them, right? Because a lot of times they're afraid to go out of their comfort zone on some pitches, right? Like for me, like something that I preach to our guys is like being a Titan pitcher, like you got to be able to throw any pitch in any count. Like you have to be able to throw any pitch in any count, right? It doesn't matter if it's a 2-2 changeup and you don't like your changeup, you got to be able to throw it, right? And a lot of times, guys, they will go back, in competition mode, they will naturally kind of go back to what's comfortable, right? Like whatever their most comfortable thing is. And to me, a lot of times I don't want my guys thinking up there. I don't want them trying to think too far ahead. I don't want them overthinking. I just want them saying like, oh, okay, like, Tyson knows what my stuff is. Like, I'm going to trust him and I'm just going to throw the ball. Like, oh, he wants fastball in, right? He wants slider away. Because sometimes they don't necessarily believe in their own stuff, right? Like they kind of need someone to say like, hey man, like, because if I call a 2-2 changeup to them, it's almost like, hey, he believes that I can throw this 2-2 changeup, right? Whereas sometimes the pitcher himself might honestly not believe it at first, right? Or maybe it's like well, I'll just be safe and throw this fastball. It's like, no, like breathe that confidence into your pitchers and say like, hey, like I believe in this pitch for you. Like I believe that this pitch is going to get him out. And for me, I think I've seen guys like just get a little bit more confident that they're not just out there on their own. They feel like they have a plan and they have someone that is understanding what their stuff is doing and how to get these guys out and wants them to succeed. And it's not just like hey, it's just me and the catcher out here. But like I said, I say it all the time, like with our pitchers and especially the catchers, right? I tell the catchers all the time, I'm like, hey man, if you see something that I can't see, just hit me with one of these. I got this one, right? The perfect example was we had a kid last year who he'd love to bust two seams in, right? Two seams in, goes through the order, like, and it's working. He's busting them in, roll over ground balls, all of this. Well, the second time through the order, I didn't know this. I can't see it. I'm in the dugout, right? Every hitter just took a little bit. They stepped off the plate. They got off the plate a little bit to be able to hit that inside fastball. I can't see that. I could not see that from the dugout. So I'm still calling inside fastballs, gives up 2 home runs that inning. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, well, the guy backed up. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff to where it's like, hey, catcher, if you see that, hey, I got it. I see something, right? Like, I want my guys to be baseball players. Like, I don't want them to just be robots. Like, oh, coach says this. But, it's a little bit more of it's more of us working together than it is of me just like, hey, this is what you're gonna do. It's truly a collaborative game plan. That's the goal of it.
Well, I think the other thing too is, I mean, some of these kids are 18, 19 years old. I mean, they have no idea how to call a game plan, a game, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, so you're the head coach in Florence this year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk me through that. What does Tyson want to be a head coach, or does he like the pitching side better?
Um, I definitely want to be a head coach one day. I love all aspects of the game. I mean, I think I enjoy pitching a little bit more just because that's obviously what I did. But yeah, one day the goal is to certainly be a head coach. I don't think that that time is, for me right now on the college side, but that's why I'm really excited about Florence. I want us, it's easy to be the guy that says, yeah, if I was the head coach, I'd do this, I'd do that. That's really easy to say when you're not the one making the decisions, right? So, I think it's going to be a great experience for me. Actually seeing what it's like to be on that side of it. I love being a pitching coach. I don't think I'll ever stop working with pitchers, even if one day down the road I get to be a head coach. I always kind of want to be a part of pitching stuff. I'm always, looking for ways to develop pitchers, way to get better on that side. That's, what I love to do. But I do like the idea, of being a head coach. I feel like it's common for a lot of guys. But yeah, I'm really excited about this summer. And hopefully, it gives me a lot of insight on what being a head coach is like. So one day, I kind of have a little bit of experience. If that
Are you helping out with the roster?
I've made the whole roster.
You made the whole roster for Florence.
Yeah, pretty much. I want to say, yeah, we had a couple kids that were on the team last year that wanted to come back, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. But yeah, I put together pretty much the entire roster.
Walk me through that a little bit because I think that's something that playing summer college baseball, especially with the transfer portal now, it's becoming something like I see a lot of guys who want to get into these good leagues. And maybe I should have said this. It's Florence Flamingos. It's in Florence, South Carolina, and it's in the Coastal Plain League.
Yep.
But how do you go about building your roster? Because I know for some summer teams, it's like, okay, we want to make sure we get the Division I guys in there because we want people to see the roster and be like, oh, we got somebody from Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever it is. How did you go about doing it?
To be honest, I reached out to some kids that I had coached in previous summers. I reached out to some kids that I had previously coached at other junior colleges, like the kids that I knew first. And then a lot of it was this, like when I posted it on Twitter, I mean, the amount of like Twitter DMs and text messages I got it was pretty absurd. And this is my first time actually recruiting it. And now, hopefully next summer I can go back to Florence and it can build off like this experience. But dude, the whole team was pretty much made within 2 weeks of me posting the job. It was that many guys reaching out and saying like, hey, get this guy. And, And for summer ball, so you give them a brief look. You might go on their stats last year, how they play last year at said school, synergy. Go on their synergy. Do you like the swing? Do you like it? Like for hitting, I'm not a great hitting guy, right? I've been trying to learn a lot more about what a good hitter looks like and all this kind of stuff. But for me, it's more just like the numbers. And a big thing for me as a pitching guy is I like guys that can field the baseball. Like to me, it's I am not one of these guys that just can sell out. Be like, hey man, I don't care if you make 40 errors as long as you hit bombs. Like that's just not me. Like watching errors get made drives me way crazier than anything else in the game of baseball when I just watch balls get kicked all over the yard. So it's definitely kind of looking at some numbers and stuff like that, but it's really interesting just because it's like, the guys that I know, that are that I would consider friends. Hey, you like this guy, take him. Cool. I might just take him for face value. Guys that I don't know as much that maybe just reached out to me. Yeah, I'm going to look at their synergy. I'm going to look at their numbers from last year. And a lot of times it's about pairing stuff. So a big thing with summer baseball is getting hitters really isn't that difficult. It's getting pitchers, right? So a lot of times your roster is going to be kind of configured a little bit by just like what schools are willing to kind of package guys. So, I have some schools that'll call and say, hey, I'll send you 2 pitchers if you take 2 of my position players, right? And that's kind of how it works a lot too. It's kind of like that sort of back and forth. You just want to make sure you have arms because position players, for the most part, you need a lot of guys, but you don't need nearly as many as you do pitchers, right? Pitchers are really hard to recruit for summer, especially when think about like there's really not a situation to where a position player won't play summer ball, right? Like even if you started 52 games this year at your school, it's still probably good for you as a hitter to go play summer ball, right?
Yep.
Go get those more at bats. As a pitcher, like you have to think off the rip, you're like half of the field is gone because they're going to throw too many innings or they're injured or whatever. Or just nowadays, it's like, oh, I'm not going to go play summer ball. I'm just going to go to this facility and throw harder. So it's like, you have that. So, but configuring it was a lot more of like guys reaching out to me more than anything this year. And then a few guys that like I actually knew already and stuff like that. So
What would you recommend for a pitcher? Let's say they threw a bunch of innings for their college this year. I mean, do you recommend them, and not necessarily for you, but in general, do you recommend them still going out and pitching a whole summer?
not a whole summer. I think for me, where I'm a lot different than a lot of guys, maybe is I believe pitchers need to pitch. Like I don't care if you threw. There's a certain number, in my opinion, that like for instance, we had a freshman last year who threw 70 innings as a freshman in college, right? Never done anything like that. Yes, shut it down for the summer, right? But like I think most guys should pitch. And for our guys, almost every single kid on our team, if not everybody, is already signed to a summer league as pitcher. Like all of my pitchers are signed for summer teams. Now, if they end up throwing 75 innings and I have to call them and say, hey man, I'm sorry, he threw 75 innings. He's got to shut it down. Most coaches understand that. But for me, like I want guys to go out there and pitch, especially if you can get them in quality leagues where, you know, like we had some kids last year that with Florida Junior College, I don't want to say there's not pressure because like obviously it's good baseball, but you're not playing in front of a big crowd or anything like that. And for these kids that have only played junior college baseball and now they want to go play at a mid-major school, right, where there's 1,500 people there a night, like it's a really good experience for you to go out there and pitch in front of people and pitch in front of an atmosphere and get that kind of work. And then obviously you're just going to be pitching against really good hitters, right? Like to me, it's learn that skill, right? Like I trained at Shred, right? And I'm very happy that I did it and I learned a lot. But looking back on it, I wish I would have played summer ball more that summer because I think it's really hard for a kid to just go to a facility and then it just immediately transfers to a game, right? There's a certain amount of kids that's like, hey man, if you know that kid's a dog, like that he loves being out there in the moment and the moment never gets too big for him, sure, right? But if you're a guy who's like, hey man, maybe you're a little sporadic on the mound and maybe you get sped up a lot, like I think going out there and being on that, getting that experience is like none other. Because with me, like pitching is like you're out there on an island by yourself, man. And the only way that you're going to continuously get better, in my opinion, is you just got to get more and more and more comfortable being out there and being on the mound, right? That's how you see some of our guys get more velo jumps. It's not anything that we did. It's not anything I did. I tell people it's not. I didn't do it. I didn't make this kid throw 95. I just gave him the opportunity to go out there on the mound, and then he felt more and more comfortable. And naturally, as you feel more comfortable, you're going to feel more confident to let it rip, right? And then that's how you see development, in my opinion. So I love for guys to play summer ball, even if you have thrown 30, 40, 50 innings. I think what you would do is structure it differently, right? So if you've thrown 45, 50 innings, I think that for your summer ball, you probably just need to roll right into it. don't take that first half of the summer off. You threw 45 innings for your team. Just immediately go out to summer league on opening day and get a quick 15 in, and then shut it down for the rest of the summer. Whereas if you're a guy who maybe you didn't throw a ton of innings or something like that, then maybe you can kind of take that first half of the summer to kind of maybe go to a facility, work on some stuff, and then take that into the second half of summer and actually try to blend what you learned in a facility in an actual baseball game.
It is kind of crazy to me because I think about there's all these guys who are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old who are in professional baseball playing 140 game seasons as a pitcher. Obviously not pitching 140 games, but they're on the team. They're pitching throughout the whole year. They don't just shut it down once June rolls around. And so these kids are the same age.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, it's very, and the beauty of this game is, and the beauty of this industry is, you can do whatever you want to do with your guys, right? Everybody has the freedom to develop guys the way they want to develop them. But I will say it is kind of insane to me how many guys I will talk to. It's like, yeah, man, if this guy gets 30 innings this spring, we're going to shut him down for the summer. And I'm like, so he threw 30 innings this spring. He threw 15 innings in inter squads this fall. So that's 45 innings for the entire year. If he wants to play professional baseball, year one, full year, he has to be expected to throw at least double that, right? At least double that without, like you said, that kind of block period. Like, oh, spring, and then, okay, I can kind of hang out for the summer, and then I'll come back in the fall. It's like, no, buddy, once you start spring training, because that's if you throw 75 innings your first league and minor league ball, like, that's just a season. That's not including what you threw in spring training. Yep. So it's like, I think you got to throw more. I think that with this whole arm epidemic thing, that it's a lot of people think, oh, the kids throw too much. To me, it's like, I tell our guys to never shut down. Like, I'm not saying like, you're always throwing hard, but like this like age of like, hey man, I'm going to take a whole month off of throwing. Like, we have pro guys that come out here to Eastern Florida that they don't ever do that. They throw 12 months out of the year. Now, maybe those deload weeks are, hey, when I'm wanting to shut my arm down a little bit, yeah, I'm only going to throw 3 days a week, and I'm just going to keep it super light, and I'm going to go to 60 to 90 feet. But like, I'm never just going to stop throwing for 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, because then if you stop for 4 weeks, now you have a whole 4-week ramp up period. And now this process is having to expedite so fast. And that's where I think a lot of the injuries come from, is kids just shut down. They throw 75 innings, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we just played our last game today. And then tomorrow it's like, you just don't touch a baseball again for a month. It's like, we kind of have to deload it and then kind of bring it back, versus just like, hey man, if your body's used to throwing 100 pitches every Friday for 4 months, and then all of a sudden now you're just not throwing anymore. It's like, well, that's going to shock the body a little bit more than deloading it, right?
What would you recommend for kids who maybe aren't yet in college yet? They're that 15, 16, 17-year-old range. Like, what if you had a family member who was in that age range, like, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think that it would be with those kids, you could probably go a month. It's just the big thing with deloading, I think that people miss the boat on, is they don't give themselves enough time to properly ramp it back up, right? That's where the deloading kind of is bad. So I would say go earlier in the fall. Like, and that's because like with high school guys, right? Like, I have my high school coaches I'm really close with, and that, like, I feel like a lot of times I see high schoolers, like, they wait to deload until like December, right? Whereas to me, it's like, I would tell them to deload sooner, right? Like, I would maybe use October as a deload month. And then that way you have all of November, December, and January to truly be ramped up for spring, right? Mm-hmm. Versus like, hey, I'm going to throw all year, and then I'm going to take December off, and then I'm going to start throwing January 2nd to be ready to pitch by February 2nd. And it's like, that's a really quick turnaround. So, I mean, I think that if you're young, I still think a month is good. I just think that it's more about starting that deload sooner, or maybe do it right after your summer season ends. Because a typical high school guy is like, he's going to pitch high school baseball all the way to like the end of August, right? And I know some kids, like, if you're trying to get recruited, then maybe you're out like in the fall, like at recruiting events and stuff. So that's fine. But like, you got to pick a time to where it's like, hey man, at some point you have to shut it down and then just get better, and then, earn yourself another opportunity in spring.
Good stuff. Tyson, appreciate you coming on the show today, man. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you at?
Twitter, I think it's let me look at my Twitter real quick. I think it's at Tyson Ellis. Yeah, at Tyson_Ellis13. Not all baseball tweets. If you like the Florida Gators, I tweet about them a lot too. And Yeah, I like to have some comedy on there as well. I like to keep it pretty easy going. I'm a baseball guy, but I'm a human too. So, but yeah, at Tyson underscore Ellis 13. That's my Twitter. Feel free to follow me, DM me. I love talking baseball. So, but yeah, I
Awesome, dude.
appreciate you having me on, dude. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, appreciate you coming on.